All right, so as Alice said, we are about to go into a bit of a panel discussion. And originally, when we were thinking about what can we do at this event, originally we were looking at doing it in person, and there was going to be all these things that were going to happen. But like everything else that's happened in 2020, what we've had to do is move online, but that's okay, because we, like I said earlier, we've got this fantastic group of young people with us who are all involved in care for creation in their own ways. You know, we've got some really diverse backgrounds here, with Scott, who's studying law, and Alice, who works in education, and everyone else. And so yeah, so we're just going to have a bit of a discussion about some questions and some themes to do with caring for our common home in the season of creation. So let's get started. The first question we're going to look at is, how do you care for the earth in your personal lives? And I think I'm throwing to Amelie.
Yeah, hi, I'm Amelie. Personally, I find what I can do in my age and living at home is my biggest thing is how much I can eliminate plastic from my life. So I try to use bamboo toothbrushes and just do simple things like trying to keep using reusable bags and avoid plastic where I can.
So jumping off of that from Amelie, I do a lot of similar things because I live at home as well with my family. And I find that it's a lot of simple things like using reusable things like bags and coffee cups and drink bottles, but also just being mindful of the use of plastic. Like, it's a simple thing that I've just been more conscious of lately, is using muesli bars or just replacing muesli bars with a banana just to eliminate that plastic. So yeah, it's just being minimal about what I purchase and what I consume and just being really conscious.
One of the things for me, I always find when I'm looking at a problem like caring for the environment, caring for the earth, is educating myself first on how I can make a difference. So in what I study, I get to look at, learn about all these people who are doing these wonderful things with technology and different systems in trying to make the world a better place at that level. But as the other two have said, the great thing about environmental justice and doing your bit for the environment is that everyone can play a part. So I'm really big on my little keep cup and things like that, that you can start to be a little bit more discerning about what you're buying and how you're consuming things, and where you put your feet as a person who's engaging with the rest of the world, which is really exciting, and I think why a lot of people are tuning in today, to try and be a part of that solution to what is a really big problem.
Thanks for that, Amelie, Scott, and Charlie. And I think, like you said, Scott, like it's not about just what we can do, but what we can all do together. And I think that's one of the really big things, is looking at other people that might have inspired us to, you know, take up the challenge and all that sort of stuff. Because you're not just born necessarily with the idea like, I'm going to be a sustainability warrior. So for you, maybe we'll start with Alice this time. Who influences you in this mission?
Yeah, thanks. I think when I think back when I was a child, my grandpa, so we always used to go to Grandma and Grandpa's farm at Springton, and without knowing it at the time, and being in the vegetable gardens and being on the land, that had a really strong influence on me. And then I picked that up again through university and then moving into education. So being able to work with young people also inspires me every day. It's beautiful seeing their care for the earth and the wonder and awe and mystery of them being outside in nature. I'm also really inspired, obviously, by Pope Francis and the clear mandate that he made in Laudato Si, not only for Catholics, but for all people, to step up and care for our common home. And he doesn't shy away from just naming how it is and what it is, and you know, challenging politics and challenging those who have power to make a change. So I have lots of people who inspire me and continue to inspire me.
Throw it over to Ria now.
So for me as well, it's my grandfather. So back in India, when I was little, we weren't really well off financially, but my grandfather used to have this garden in his backyard, and there were only 2 coconut trees back then. And every summer, all of us young children of the neighborhood, everyone would gather in the backyard, and we would just wait for my grandfather to just pluck that coconut out of the tree and bring us all that joy of summer. And it was because we weren't in a very financially well neighborhood as well. And to see God's creation, the littlest of God's creation, brings so much joy to so many people, still amazes me till this day. So I think my grandfather, he poured out so much of his love, and that love brought about that joy through God's creation. So for me, preserving that creation is very important. And the other people who really inspire me is St. Anthony of Padua and St. Francis of Assisi, how they call creation, every single thing, brother, sun, sister birds, or, it's just the respect that they have for God's creation is just amazing. And that kind of teaches us that we need to respect God's creation. When God says that he gives us dominion over his creation, it's not just about, have your way with it. It's a responsibility that a parent is handing his first child, here, look after your siblings sort of thing. So for me, it's really important to pass on that sustainability to the future generation so they can do that for the generations to come.
Yeah, for me, it's a man called Thomas Berry, and he said, "The universe is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects," and that really spoke to me. So yeah, at the moment it's quite recent, but besides that, it would obviously be the Pope, as well as Greta Thunberg, who I think is absolutely amazing. So yeah.
Awesome, thanks guys. And I think the next question really flows well into that, and Ria and Alice, you kind of have already touched on this, so if you want to elaborate a little bit more, but the next question really is, how do you connect your faith with the environment? And throwing it over to Charlie this time first off.
Yeah, so personally, I feel really connected to God whenever I'm in nature. And so for me, I guess it's almost easy because it's just so natural for me. If I am feeling a little bit disconnected from God, I'll go out in nature and just seeing his creation and hearing the birds and the wind, and it just really centers me and grounds me. And reading through the Bible as well, it's just so evident that the respect that we need to have for nature, the fact that God, the earth is a reflection of God's glory and a reflection of heaven. So we just really need to use that to praise God. And yeah.
I think you said that beautifully, Charlie. I don't know if I could add much more to that, apart from affirming what you said, that for me as well, I feel at peace and I feel nurtured when I'm in nature. And for me, that is that time to connect with my faith and with God. And I just feel this sense of warmth every time I'm with nature. And also when I'm working with young people in school, it's a way in for them to explore their faith and their relationship with God as well. And I continue to be inspired by what they experience.
I think you guys have said pretty much everything. But for me as well, I was just reflecting on the question. And whenever we go to a museum or whenever we look at a painting, I assume that the painter is trying to tell me something through his painting. So for me, whenever I'm in nature, I try and think of what God might be trying to tell me in that moment. So yeah, I think nature for me is the best way that I can connect with God, besides the Bible.
Yeah, wow, great answers. That analogy, Ria, I've never like really thought of it that way before, but it's so true, isn't it? That I'm gonna write that one down and keep that one like on my little desk. And yeah. So as Peter mentioned earlier in when he was introducing himself, he said, you know, that climate change, sustainability, caring for the environment is something that you all, everyone watching, have told us is really important to young people. And that was part of something that happened in the lead up to the Year of Youth when we did our Raise Your Voice sessions and some other surveys that we've done in the lead up to the Year of Youth, which was in 2018. So with that in mind, and how, you know, we keep asking young people what's important to them, why do you think the environment is important to young people? And I'm throwing to Scott.
I think the environment is one of those issues that when you look at when people do studies, and when the Catholic Church does studies on what young people are most concerned about or most interested in, the environment is always top 3 on that list. And it does make sense, because the effects that we are seeing from climate change and from pollution will affect us as a generation and the generations that come after us way more than the generations that are at the moment in positions best to address the issue. So as the Year of Youth being the Catholic Church's way of acknowledging that we as young people are the future, that is something that is replicated across society. And it places not only a responsibility on the entire of the world to protect the environment for future generations, but it places a responsibility on us as young people to see that we will be affected by this, and those after us will be affected by this. And although we may not be the people who can make the greatest change, or maybe we think that we aren't the people that can make the greatest change at this stage, we can make more change than sometimes we do think. And one day we will be those people who can make the most change. And we want to be ready. We want to be ready as a generation to tackle these big issues and fill those gaps that have seemed to have arrived, that we need to address. So I think it's one of those issues that is just so important for us to get our heads around.
I completely agree with everything Scott said. As young people, this is our future. And in my position at Cardine College, where I get to work with so many passionate young people, I often hear them saying that the climate is something that they're most passionate about. And I think it's for many reasons, but I think one of the main reasons is because it is becoming more common to connect faith with environment. And I also think we are at a pivotal part of our lives when we are hearing the statistics of climate change. And I think a lot of us are genuinely seeing the effects around us. And so I think it really inspires us and pushes us as young people to think, how can we take action? Because right now we're not in a point of our life where, like Scott said, we think we have the most power in this situation, like say because our generation isn't exactly into politics yet or up very high in that scale of things. So we're more thinking about what we can do in our own realities. And I think that's really special. And I think it really connects with our youth at the moment. So I'll throw it over to Amelie.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything everyone said. I think young people are very passionate because it is our realities. That isn't to say that other generations are not passionate as well, because I think I've been inspired most by many of the people around me who are older than me. In saying that, I think young people we've grown up where this is very much, we're taught about it at school. We see the climate changing, we're experiencing that. And I think the fact that young people have such a passion for the environment and can see that within their faith is really inspiring and is really, really great.
Yeah, I think all of you had such great answers there. And I think something that you said, Emily, you know, we're starting to see the effects of climate change. You know, before sort of summer, late last year and early this year, where we had the big bushfires and stuff, before that, it was kind of a little bit harder for us in Australia to see. And for those of you who have travelled overseas to other countries where the effects of climate change are actually a lot more obvious, or, you know, like the sea levels rising and all those sorts of things, it's becoming more of a thing where we're realizing that what we do here and like the impacts of what we do in Australia as a whole can have on someone, you know, overseas, or, you know, not even that far away, you know, like just an hour planes ride away. It's starting to come on our shores, and we can see that this is actually having a real big impact. So with this last question, and I'm throwing it open to anyone that feels like they really want to answer, but the last question is, why do you think it's so important to take action regarding climate change?
I'll jump in. Well, as we all just said, it's a reality, and it's a reality for us, but it's also for all of the future generations. And we have a responsibility, and our faith calls us to that responsibility to care for our common home. So for me, that's the driver towards making those small changes at home and also in my professional life to combat the effects of climate change.
And I think what Alice said there about, you know, feeling called as an individual is so important, because there's no one person who can fix this problem. There's no group of people that can fix this problem. It requires input from people from all parts of society and of all ages and of all nationalities to come together to fix these sorts of issues. But without taking those first steps as individuals, it's very hard to get that sort of cooperation amongst so many people, and that is what is required to fix these sorts of environmental issues. So there's so many barriers, but so many opportunities as well, I think, for individuals and for the whole of society to come together to combat this issue. So.
I completely agree. We are at a point in our society where we need to make a change soon. Like, it's one of those issues where it's the sooner we make a change, the better. There's no point waiting for someone else to make a change or waiting for anyone else to do anything. I think it's time that we take responsibility for ourselves first and foremost, and the people around us, and educate as many people as we can and make as many changes as we can in our own reality, because that's where change happens. You don't need to wait for anyone else, for any politicians, for anyone to tell you to make a change. It is your responsibility. And like Alice said, it's our responsibility as young people and in the positions we have to make a change.
Just adding on to what Scott said earlier, you know, a lot of us think that, you know, even we won't be able to make the change that is needed. But again, going back to what St. Louis de Montfort said, the simplest of steps might not make a difference in a few minutes or a few years, but it will make a difference. Though you won't be able to see it, it will make a difference. Every step we take, it's like every drop makes an ocean. So yeah, it is important that we take a step now for the future to be a bit more sustainable.